Many of you I know, my name's Matt Hovde. I'm an artistic director here for the Second City, and just momentarily we're going to bring out Joe and chat a little bit.
Thank you for breaking that ice, by the way. That's really helpful. We appreciate it. You're a comedy guy.
Yes, we started in comedy.
Yeah, that's sort of maybe kind of how I want to jump in this, because the sense of humor of the MCU has been a big part of its success. It's kind of known for it. The ability to walk the line successfully maybe distinguishes it from some other franchises that haven't been able to walk that so well. And knowing that you come from a background working on, Community and those like really high revered comedy projects, how did you find yourself in comedy, and like how did that connect to your success in these movies?
It's weird. My brother and I grew up loving all kinds of different pop culture, movies, TV. We did gravitate towards comedy. We grew up in Cleveland, which is like a mini Chicago, and we were talking about this backstage. There's a very low self-esteem sense of humor that comes out of Chicago, and then Cleveland is like down here. The river caught on fire when we were kids. The mayor's hair caught on fire. We went bankrupt. So at a certain point, you're made fun of every night on Johnny Carson, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I just live in a shithole. So, so you form a sense of humor around that to protect yourself, and it's very sort of self-effacing. And
were you a Johnny Carson person, like watching?
I was a kid.
Late
yeah, we were I was the kind of kid who never went to bed. As long as there was TV on, I was watching it until the sign off. And then, we found our way out to Los Angeles. We made a very small credit card movie that we got discovered by a filmmaker named Steven Soderbergh. And then Soderbergh asked us to write 2 scripts for our next film. And one was a really big sort of, epic mob film, drama. But it was expensive, and it was period, and it had a huge cast in it. And for 2 young guys who just made a $30,000 credit card movie, it was a big leap. And the other one was
credit card was that $30,000.
Yes.
That's not bad.
No, it was a lot.
That's a lot of credit right there.
We didn't pay them off until we made the movie in '94, and we didn't pay the cards off until 2005. So it took us pay the cards off. But and then we wrote a comedy based on an old Italian movie that we loved called Big Deal on Madonna Street, and we called it to Welcome to Collinwood, which was a neighborhood in Cleveland that we grew up near. And Soderbergh picked the comedy because it was cheaper, and then we got it made, and it led to a TV comedy for a show called Lucky, and then the show Lucky led to Arrested Development, and then we won an Emmy for Arrested Development, and then suddenly we're comedy guys, and we're doing well in that
Do you
space.
feel like you ever studied comedy? Did you study improv or stand-up or anything like that?
No, none of it. I mean, I got an MFA in acting from Case Western in Cleveland, but it was really, and I don't know that we are, we'll crack a lot of jokes around each other, but I would not say that we are funny guys. I would say that we just have a taste about humor, and that our specific taste happened to line up with Arrested Development, Community, and Happy Endings, and all those shows that we worked on.
You keep saying we're acknowledging you have a sibling.
I do.
Connected in this business.
It is not my real sibling. I must express that today. This is the first time anyone's finding this out.
What?
It is an actor who's playing my brother. I found him years ago. It just seemed like a more interesting way into the business.
Well,
a team.
We have a lot of filmmakers in our audience. This is your first piece of advice that you're giving them is hire someone to play
a sibling.
A sibling.
I mean, look, there are no mother-daughter teams out there, father-son teams. So find a dad, find a mom. Yeah.
So when you're working on these shows, I mean, these are kind of legendary comedies for people that really know comedy. They sort of broke that sitcom format. Both Arrested Development, Community are inside reference kind of shows. Did you pick up on any sort of comic philosophy that drove you, or what did you kind of pick up from on the craft side of comedy?
Arrested Development, the style of that show is based on a movie that won Cannes in the 90s called Man Bites Dog, and it's a French film about a serial killer. It's actually a very funny movie, where a documentary crew follows the serial killer around and then slowly gets pulled into his world with him. And and the style of it is incredibly verite. It has a lot of those pan-offs to find reactions in the middle of sequences. And we literally would love that movie so much that when we got the job on Arrested, we said, all right, it's going to be Man Bites Dog. Also, what was popular at the time was the Dogma films that were coming out of Northern Europe, and where they were writing like rules about how to make things. And we wrote up a list of rules for Arrested Development. We're like, nobody gets a trailer, do your own hair and makeup, because we were going to move very quickly on that show. What was so unique about it is that there were like 35 locations in 5 to 7 days of that pilot. So we were literally changing locations like every 2 hours. So we had to come up with a look and a style that would accommodate that. The way that we lit it, the kind of cameras that we used. The first narrative show shot with digital cameras and television at the time. So we broke a lot of rules in order to try to accomplish the scale and ambition of those quick little pops and flashbacks.
Yeah, I'm just picturing like the contrast between that approach, which is fast, kind of loose, maybe not even low budget, but like lo-fi in terms of
definitely low budget. It is lo-fi, low
Yeah.
budget. Yeah, because you don't have the money for the scale of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So then, how does your brain like literally wrap your head around going from that, and now you're making this thing, which like seems impossible to make, and was it impossible to make?
It wasn't possible. Yes.
Like
that's
the
one of my
budget.
brothers in here. He actually died during the but it was worth it. It was worth it.
I mean, this is his tombstone, the movie event of a lifetime. Not bad. You just have to talk about it now. But I guess I'm thinking on even like a day-to-day shooting schedule, your prep process to go from even like the humble credit card movie that you make to like a thing where there's just people involved, so many designers, the scale of it. I'm trying to even picture like how you're going from the script to how to shoot the scene, like from the practical side of directing. Like here's a script that says, oh, they fight and then Thor hits Thanos and then Captain America gets the thing, and then you're like, how do you go from, how do you make that from
How do you translate that?
Well, yeah, like what steps do you break it down into to get that shot?
I mean, first of all, it's not different than anything else you do with a camera, right? Your job as a filmmaker is to point the camera at an actor and try to get some sort of emotional truth out of them. Again, whether you're trying to be funny or dramatic, doesn't matter. What makes comedy so great is when it's emotionally truthful. When you commit to it emotionally, it tends to be much funnier than when you don't. So all the rules are the same across the board. What changes, where the money goes, is in VFX. So you're mostly shooting people against a green screen. There are no sets there. And then you're going to recreate that stuff for millions of dollars in post. You're going to create CG characters. Again, though, we have real actors walking around. Josh Brolin is walking around in a pair of pajamas with a little tennis ball coming off the top of his head. But he's there, and he's interacting, and he has an eye line to the other actors, and they're creating emotional truth with each other. So that's all the same. The CG is really expensive. The actors are really expensive. And your crew...
Jesus, look at that cast. I didn't even notice.
That's like $200 million in
can you imagine?
Yes, right there.
But like that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
Because everything you're saying rings true to our world here, where we don't have sets. Like our prop budget is $20 maybe. Like we don't spend any money on those things. We don't have. It's all in the imagination, and our actors have no problem with it. But there are many actors from theater, TV, and film that like it's hard to perform without the trappings of that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to work any? And I'm not even looking for you to like drop a name because that's really easy, but feel free to dish. But how does that translate into, you have these actors who are like actors, and then you're trying to get them to like pretend to act with a tennis ball on someone's head. As a director, do you feel like you have work to do on that front when they show up on set, or did they?
No, here's the good news is we're working, not dissimilar to television, you're working in a universe where, the actor has real ownership over their character. I used to say, on any show that we were working on, by the time we got to episode 6, I don't care what show it was, whatever actor was playing a character knew that character better than I ever would.
They knew.
And so when you hand them a line of dialogue, they know exactly what to do with it. I couldn't, you can't accomplish this as a one-off. You couldn't have 40 actors on set, explain their backstories to them every day, talk about where they're coming from and where they're going, and get any work done. It wouldn't happen. Nor could you introduce 40 characters in a one-off movie. It's just not possible. So this is in a way, I think representative of the future of narrative that you guys are going to be involved in and promote as it moves forward is I think that people are a lot more interested in long-form storytelling. I think they feel like they get more out of it when they commit to it. I grew up on 2-hour closed-ended movies, but I don't know how long of a life they have left in this world, because when you go look at what you're getting on Netflix or Amazon and you get a 10-hour drop of Stranger Things, and you kill a character in episode 8, it's a lot more impactful than when you kill a character an hour into a 2-hour movie that's closed-ended. So we're learning that you get that there's a ratio of commitment to emotional fulfillment, and I think that Marvel caught a wave and is helping to instill in our brains this idea that long form generates bigger payoff. If you saw this in the theater on opening weekend, did anyone in here see it opening weekend? I mean, the theater's crazy, right? People are screaming and jumping up and down and running around. We snuck into a theater in LA at UCLA, and there was a kid near the end of the film who was hyperventilating behind me. I thought we were gonna have to call the paramedics for him. But you can't get that kind of emotion out of people without 10 years of commitment on their part. That's the payoff that they get for the 10 years.
Did you kill off some characters in this movie?
Maybe a couple.
What? Yeah.
Shocker. But to talk about that for a second, to me, one other thing I think is really important in this market, especially if there are young filmmakers in the room, is disruption. I think that we are in a period where audiences want to be surprised. I can take my kids into a theater when they were younger. Now they're a little older, but when they were 10 years old, they could sit in the theater, 5 minutes in, they could tell me how a commercial movie was going to end, because they know it's going to end optimistically. They could watch the math being done from a storytelling standpoint and go, oh, it's going to go here. And that's, I think, is part of the reason that comedies are having a hard time working in the marketplace right now, because comedies for so long were so formulaic in a 2-hour format. And I grew up in comedy, so I understand it, but it was a very formulaic kind of approach. And so you always knew where it was going to go until it started to get more twisted and, hard art comedies and, people being disruptive and doing things that you're not expecting. So you look at what we did in the Marvel films, we had a very simple formula. Winter Soldier, the good guys are the bad guy. Civil War, Tony Stark is at odds with Captain America. We took your favorite heroes and we put them in a fight against each other. At the end of Infinity War, we killed half of your favorite characters. At the end of End Game, we actually killed your favorite characters. So those are disruptive choices that we're making that are surprising you, but also creating an experience for you when you're watching it in the theater.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And often, perhaps, television is a little ahead sometimes of that movie curve. It takes longer to do. But.
It doesn't adhere to the same metrics that movies do.
Yeah.
Movies, you've got to hit opening weekend. If you don't open, you're done, right? Because we're so ready to, we're a headline culture now. You read one headline and that's the story.
That's the story.
Right? So if you had a bad weekend, that's your headline, you're done. Where TV, and this is where Netflix sort of changed the game, is nobody knows. Nobody knows how good something did. You just watch it, and the only thing that matters is qualitatively, did you enjoy it or not? And that's not true with movies anymore.
So you've been involved with this franchise and this movie. I mean, it takes a long time. There's a huge timeline of your involvement from, I'm sure you weigh in on the script, and a lot of people probably weigh in on the script. At some point, you all kind of sign off, and you're like, this is what we're going to make. And then you have to start figuring out how to get it done, right? So maybe let's just pick a point in that timeline. I'd just love to hear a little bit about specifically, almost on a day-to-day basis, what is it like to be in the middle of that giant timeline? So let's say that the script is signed off on, everyone's kind of on board. How do you start thinking about what you're going to do as a director? When do you start to think about how to shoot something, what to do with this particular scene?
You're thinking about it all the time. First of all, script on these movies is critically important. And we have a very, very close relationship with Chris Marcus and Steve McFeely, who wrote all 4 Marvel films that we did, and we used the process that we developed in television to develop those scripts. And what that process was is the 4 of us would get in a room and talk for months about the material, because we're trying to find things that we can access emotionally. They're trying to find things they can access emotionally, and we do that together, and then we come up with a script that is going to go to thousands of people on the crew. So it has to have our director vision in the script. Otherwise, all you would do all day long is answer questions.
Yeah.
And really what you need to do is, you got to fly at like 100,000 feet when you're directing a movie like this, and have a lot of really excellent collaborators working with you that can help you execute your vision. And the more detail you put into the script, the easier it is for them to understand what it is that you want. And for the actors to understand what they want, what you want from them when they come to set.
So when you're in this room,
Yeah.
you're like the 4 of you are like locked in. And are you like snacking and like
Everything. It's
Like-
terrible. It's donuts. It's chocolate. My brother has he sets his phone his alarm on his phone every 30 minutes, and he gets on the floor and he does like 30 or 40 push-ups, because you will, like, rigor mortis will start to set in, because you can sit in that room forever.
Because these are long
Yeah.
sessions, right?
But we have a very focused and disciplined approach to it. What we do is the first thing we do is we come up with a theme. What are we trying to say with this movie? And the theme for these 2 films, for Infinity War and Endgame, was, are we all fated, or can you alter your fate through sheer force of will? And so if you look back at the movie, you can see fate wins at the end of Infinity War, right? There's a reason that Thanos says, "I am inevitable," multiple times in both movies. He represents fate. And then at the end of Endgame, through sheer force of will, Tony Stark reverses fate. So that's because you have a theme, then we now have a cohesive line that we can pull through the 2 movies. We understand who the villain represents. We understand what the heroes represent. Once that's done, once we understand what we're trying to say, then we start talking about what's the story. What are we interested in? What do we want to see happen? And that could just be key moments that we're compelled by. Infinity War, Cap needs a great entrance. We haven't seen him for 2 years. Where is he? What's he doing? And then you try to figure out where that goes, and then we start writing things down on cards, and then cards
That's
start
what I was
going on
going
a
to
board.
say. Are you using a whiteboard? Are you like visualizing?
It's all
the work?
whiteboard.
Yeah.
And then once you start to have a few cards up there, then you try to fill in around it and tell a story around it. And we'll throw out, I think on Infinity War, we probably threw out 3 complete scripts. Just threw them out. But we learned with each draft. We learned something. There was a really compelling draft that had Thanos narrating the whole thing like Goodfellas. Where it's told from the point of view of the villain.
Or like the Wonder Years.
Yes,
It's kind of my favorite reference.
But we learned a lot about him from that narration. I ultimately don't know that it would have been as commercially successful as where we ended up, but it led us to this idea that that movie was from his point of view, and then ultimately that movie became a smash and grab heist movie where he was motivating the plot of the film, and ultimately, was, by definition of the protagonist, terms of a protagonist, he was the protagonist of that movie because he hit all of the key moments in the film, were his moments.
Yeah, I mean, look, his head is huge.
Yeah, that's why he needed. To steal the movie.
He did.
It's a big head.
So do you, for a movie this big, do you end up doing like some sort of table read with all the actors to like hear it out loud?
No, because we can never get them all in the room at the same time. I mean, I think the most complicated version of this, you look at that cast, is really just trying to get them to set. And to make sure that you can get people there at the right times. Only a key part of the cast is people are in the movie throughout it, are what we would call first position to us, meaning that, we get them for run a show, their schedule has to be completely available to us. And then if people are just having smaller parts in the film, we have to work around whatever else they have going on in their lives.
And do you have like a math person who helps you map out those schedules?
I think it's without question the most difficult part of
Sounds horrible.
any movie that's ever been made was working out the cast schedules for Infinity War and Endgame, and that was our producers. who really had to do all the heavy lifting, and our assistant director.
So, not to dive even deeper into it, but I guess I am going to dive even deeper into it because I'm just so curious about like what you're thinking about, and then how that gets translated into how they bring people to set. So, are you building like your dream for like we're going to shoot these scenes first, and then are you budgeting?
No, we don't even bother wasting our time dreaming about what order we're going to shoot in. We're just like, here's the script. Tell us when you can get everybody.
They figure it out, and then they're like, "Oh, we're gonna shoot this scene first. Show up," and then you show up, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, but here's the thing about it, and it's you're never in this position in films ever, and frankly, it's probably not a good position to be in unless I think you've been doing it for 20 years and you have perspective on it. It's helpful to have limited resources as an artist because it forces you to make compelling choices, right?
Check.
Now I'm about to say we're in a position on these two films where we had unlimited resources.
Yeah, right.
Okay? So we could constantly correct things. We could be iterative throughout the process. We could shoot something. We're shooting for a year straight.
Yeah.
So you could shoot something like 2 months in, edit it, collect the rest of the movie, and then realize like 6 months in that you missed a close-up there that is going to really pay off emotionally, and we have the actor back for another scene, throw him on a green screen and let's get the close-up, right? So in a way, we always had the ability. It was the only limit was the amount of sleep that we needed to get, but we always had the ability to keep iterating and try to increase the quality of the content.
What was your typical work day like?
When you're in production on something like this, it's a 7-day week thing because usually on Saturday you're probably doing like a motion capture unit. Then Sunday you're working on pages and trying to do your laundry. So you're 7 days a week. You're usually up at 5:30 or 6. You're to set by 7. We were shooting what they call French hours, so there were 10-hour days. So we'd be done, sometimes you go over a little bit. So we'd be done at 5 or 6 in the afternoon. We go into writing for 2 hours. We go into VFX for an hour or two. Then we go to editorial till about midnight. Then you go home, you sleep till 5 or 5:30, and then you're up and you do this every day for about a year straight. So it requires it's incredibly.
I hope they pay you well for this.
They pay you okay.
Okay, good.
It's incredibly rigorous. It's like physically and emotionally and spiritually draining, but it's a good reason that there's two of us.
So when you just go back to that moment when 6 months later you're like, oh, we need to go back and kind of either reshoot or conceive of something differently. Does that ever drive you or the actors crazy to have to go back and remember what that felt like?
I think they all get it. They know that we're just chasing the best movie possible, and everybody's always game for. We'll come back and usually explain to them, all right, here's why we're doing this again, like this line didn't work, or we took the wrong point of view last time, or things will illuminate themselves. I mean, you're working on an organism that is a year long. It's going to present itself in different ways as the year progresses. You're going to come up with new ideas. Somebody does a scene in a way you're completely not expecting. So Pratt and Hemsworth in that scene where they meet in Infinity War, they ended up improvising a large portion of that scene. We would... once they would, and the way we work with improv is very specific, and we've done this since Arrested Development. We let people improvise for a few takes. Then we take the best of the improv, we stop shooting for 10 or 15 minutes, and we turn it into a script.
Script it up.
And then we give it back to them, because what happens is if all you do is improvise, then you're going to wind up with, something amorphous. It lacks direction. Sometimes people are just improvising on character, they're not improvising on story. And these movies are very tight. They have to move forward on story. So we have to take the fun things that they did and find a way to get them back into the story. So that's how things will change as you're working. And then you get that and you go, oh my gosh, these guys are hilarious together. Now we have to figure out an arc for them that will pay off at some point.
Did you trust kind of all the actors to do that, or were you selective in the scenes where you allowed them to play?
I mean, you're selective because not everybody wants to do that. Some people like studying. Benedict is a really well-trained actor. He likes studying the script, preparing, and coming to set and delivering his lines. Now, when he's working with Downey, it's a different story because Robert will never do the same line twice. I think it's sort of he gets bored the minute he says the line, he's already bored. And then so what he does is a very unique process. Robert has an earwig that he uses, And what we'll do with him is like every Sunday before we shoot a week's worth of stuff with Robert, we'll go to his house, we'll have lunch, and we'll come up with a bunch of alts and improvs. And he writes those down, and then he hands them to an assistant who's been working with him for years. And so right before the take, he'll go, "What's that? What's an improv
Jarvis,
for this line?"
I presume.
Yes,
Is the assistant.
and then he'll do 2 or 3.
That's a good reference.
It is a good reference. He'll do 2 or 3 alts throughout the scene, so he's constantly keeping it fresh for himself.
That's pretty cool. As a director, you're shooting for a year. Can you maybe pick a moment or recall a moment when like either something didn't go well or something went better than you expected, and you just had that sort of moment as a director where you're like, yeah, man, we found something today out of nothing, or we made something happen that wasn't going to, that may surprise you or something? I just love to hear those little details.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it can be, you have to stick with things and dig it out. Like the first thing that we shot in Infinity War was the scene where they're all on Thanos' home planet, and it's the Guardians meet the Avengers, right? And it's not where they fight each other, but it was the actual scene where they're talking about the plan, and Downey's like giving that really long, slow burn look to a Star-Lord, and when the day started, it was a total disaster, because what you're doing is you're taking tone from one movie and tone from another movie, and you're trying to smash it together. Ultimately, it's what excites my brother and I the most. You go back and look at Community. I mean, the whole show was an experiment in tone for the time that we were there. And so we're generally excited by that stuff. But what happens when you take those chemicals and mix them, it gets very combustible at first in a way that like you're like, oh man, is this gonna be a disaster? And then, if you stick with it, and that took us like 2 or 3 days to shoot that scene, by the 3rd day it was humming. But the first day I was like, oh, this could not go well. Just like the tones weren't
just
meshing.
Your tone ears sort of.
Yes, it was just off. And then you have to keep calibrating and like constantly adjusting and pitching out new lines and, trying to, we had to figure out at first, I think, Downey wasn't so abrasive and it wasn't funny. And then we said, no, they're idiots. Like treat them like idiots, and this is going to be a terrible experience for you. And you realize you have almost no shot at winning, and play that scene, and then suddenly the conflict came to life. But so that took us like a day to figure out. That's
the kind of language you might use on set to talk to the actor. You might say like, hey, let's try it with this status in mind or this tone in mind. Those are the kind of...
We keep it very simple.
Yeah.
Like when we talk to actors, I studied acting, I get it. We know how to talk their language, but I don't like to get people in their heads. And one important thing we do is we never cut. Because we're shooting digital, the minute you say cut, somebody wants to have a smoke, somebody's got to go to the restroom, somebody needs M&Ms from craft services, you lose focus. So we will start rolling on a scene, and we'll do 7 or 8 takes without cutting. And typically what we do is we either shout a direction from the monitor because you can't think. I'm like, do it again, but get angry on this line. Go. And it keeps you in the scene, and then you get momentum going. And by that 3rd or 4th take, you're not thinking about your lines anymore. You're not thinking about the direction I gave you. You're in the scene. And you can, again, this is movie making, so you can build a performance by just going, I got the first part of it in that take. Now I can get the second part of it, and I can focus on the third part of it.
Yeah, that's wild. Are there moments, we know in film, what? There are moments in filmmaking where things don't go as planned, or you can't account for some detail, either the weather or an actor's hang up or something. Do you have a moment that you can recall where something like just didn't go your way and you had to compromise or scrap it or like completely reconceive a thing? Or is that sort of not
I mean,
unacceptable?
I don't know that we've ever scrapped anything. You certainly have to dig things out. That's part of being a director, is sitting there and going, and it's happened a few times. It's rare, but it happens where you're shooting a scene. I think this happened on Community once, where I was shooting this scene and I got like 3 hours into it and I went, oh, I totally screwed up the blocking. This is not going to help the comedy in any way, and it's not translating story. And I just said to everybody, I said, stop. We got to reblock this. Those 3 hours are gone. And we redid it, and it goes faster because you got,
they know the rhythm.
3 hours in, you can't get it, and the rhythm isn't working. we threw it out, started over, and then you get the scene. But that's, again, part of being a director is being sensitive to the moment, understanding
For sure.
when things are working, when they're not working, and if they're not working, why are they not working?
When you do your blocking, are you like map it out on a piece of paper?
Not at all.
No, you just...
I think that's, that could lead to very wooden performances. What you typically do is like, I have a general shape of it. Why don't you come in from over there? Why don't you come in from over here? And you're in the room already. And then I let it play out. Then I'll watch it and I'll see what happens. I'll go, that's an interesting moment. Come around this way. And then we shape it usually over the course of like a half hour. So like say, take a scene from Community. It would take 25, 30 minutes to just block a scene. But once you've blocked it, then you send the actors away to go get ready, and you spend a good 20 minutes with your team just talking through, all right, how do we want to cover this? What are we trying to say? And then an hour in, you've got a plan and you're ready to go.
Yeah, that's very organic, or you're trying to preserve the organicness of the story in the moment.
You have to, because I think that, the actors have to have emotional ownership and they want to contribute. And if you're directing them in a way where they're like a mannequin, just go get mannequins. But if you want like a real truthful performance out of somebody, then they're going to have to feel it and be contributive and be part of it.
We're almost ready to take some questions from you all, but maybe just kind of to button up some of the values that you've articulated, which I really appreciate hearing about. There's a couple of metrics for success when you're a big-time film director on a project like this. Obviously, you're going to hear about the numbers and the revenue and this is the movie event of a lifetime, Joe.
Yes.
But just as an artist, just as a director, are there internal metrics that you have for your own success on something, regardless of kind of how
Yeah, we've been doing this for a long time, and if I could pass anything along to any young filmmakers out there, it'd be this. Make the story that you want to tell, make what you believe in, make what you care about. Because I'll tell you this, at the end of the day, if you try to predict what people want, you're never going to succeed because they all want something different. And when you do that on a project and it doesn't work, you're going to wake up every day and go, why did I do that? And if you make what you want, if you tell a story that you care about and hope that other people like it, if it doesn't work, at least you wake up every day and say, I told the story that I wanted to tell, which is a lot better spiritually and it's a lot healthier for you than to compromise and try and anticipate the story that people want. And we had a great experience with Marvel. They were, we always say there are no director's cuts that you're going to get because you got it. That's it. Like everything that's in that movie is everything we wanted and everything we cared about. And they were always very accommodating about that, as long as the story was tracking, because we're vigilant and very hard on our material. That's a healthy experience as an artist.
Well, congratulations on that. That's pretty unusual, I think, in any business
Very
to have
unusual,
that, to feel that pride. Let's see what you all would like to ask about. We're going to have some hands shooting up. We have some microphone runners, so we'll try to balance people in the back with microphones with people in the front. Let's just shoot right back there on the aisle.
We're here?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, there's a bunch of hands right there. Pick one. We got Lynn, our microphone runner right now. We love you, Lynn.
So during the creative process with your brother, what's it like getting into arguments with him?
I mean, we do it all the time as part of the process. Is that you have sometimes one of us will just assume the contrary position so we can argue through the idea, just to make sure that we've vetted the idea and that we've tested it. So it's a healthy part of our process.
And to the questioner, we have a special gift of a digital code.
Wait. Is this event tied to some sort of release of something?
Maybe.
Maybe. All right, we'll go right here. Nick. Hi.
So I had heard that Tom Holland improvised the "I don't want to go, Mr. Stark." What was your initial reaction when he did that? Was everyone just quiet? Was everyone just tearing up?
The way that one worked, Spider-Man was my favorite character growing up. I knew that was going to be an emotionally resonant moment. I know that he's popular with younger people, so it's going to be a tough scene for people. It was tough for me, and I was like, until I cried on set, I didn't want to be done with the scene. And we did it a few times, and it was very short. He just kind of fell onto Downey's arms and laid down on the ground. And then I just ran up to him at one point. I literally just said, I want you to stretch this out. I want you to make it way more painful for us. And I just said, you don't want to go. That's it. And let's see what happens. And then he played the scene and just started improvising and just started repeating, I don't want to go, Mr. Stark. And then I started tearing up in the monitor and went, all right, we're done, we got this.
Yeah, we have so many possibilities. Let's go, how about there, right there, in the yellow shirt.
What's your favorite scene in End Game?
Favorite scene in End Game. It sounds like your favorite scene. I love the scene where they go to recruit Thor and they find him in his cabin, because I think that really is a virtuoso performance from Hemsworth. It is very, very difficult to play comedy with that level of pathos at the same time, and he did it, and it's both hysterical and heartbreaking.
Great. Well, I guess there's no more questions, so anywhere over there, pick someone over there. Lynn, you're going to have to just steer it, I think. There's too many good hands, good questions.
Hi, what's your favorite memory of Stan Lee?
I mean, he was like a bright light on set. Everybody loved it when he came. It's so interesting. We had all these movie stars on set, and whenever Stan Lee showed up for his cameo, it was like, everybody was a kid again. And it's just hearing his voice, it was like Pavlovian. If you grew up watching the Spider-Man cartoon or... so I don't know. It was just that he was a warm person, and he brought a lot of warmth to the set.
Great. Well, okay. Yes.
Move it around a little bit, yeah.
So I have one question. Why was it called Avengers End Game?
So he's asking why was it called Avengers End Game? Ultimately, we just felt like this is the.
That's a good question.
It's a very good question. That this is the final act, and that Endgame felt appropriate to us because we had set it up as terminology from Tony over the films, and that this was a payoff for that, and clearly it was an ending for a couple of people. So.
Good job. Yeah, somewhere over there. Where are you, Lynn? How about up there? Oh, yeah, Lynn. Very excited. Yep.
What's something that you learned on your credit card movie that you still keep in your head today?
Something we learned in our credit card movie we keep in our head today. You know what? I think it was, that when you're a director, that you have to stay really active on set. You have to stay actively engaged on your feet, interfacing with everyone and giving as much information to each department as you can as the day progresses. And that's how you get your vision on screen the most clearly.
Go for it. Where are you, Lynn?
Hi, I have a quick question.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm just curious, how much input do you have as a director, or even the characters or the actors in some of this, specifically the Spanish dub version of the film?
We don't have a ton of input in that. I mean, we're just trying to get the mix done and the VFX. The VFX will, it'll kill you. Usually getting that down to the wire. So dubs are all handled by, distributors in each region. So it's not us. Blame your local distributor. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, all right. Hi.
Hi. So the I Love You 3000, how did you guys come up with that? And did you know or plan for the impact it would have on, the We Love You 3000?
So she's asking about the I Love You 3000, where it came from and the impact on the movie. So first of all, one of those Sunday sessions we had with Robert, he said, my kid says this crazy thing to me all the time, I love you 3000. We thought, that's adorable. So we wrote it into the script. And then we didn't come up with the idea to have him recall it at the end of the movie until we had screened it a few times and we saw the impact it was having on test audiences. Again, this is part of that iterative process of making these movies. You have to be alert all the time. You have to be listening. You have to just keep striving for improvement of the narrative. And then we added it to his hologram at the end of the film, so that there was an arc to it. We had no idea that it would really catch the way that it did. But it seems with these movies that in our meme culture that there's always a couple of things that sort of stick, and that was one of them.
Hi. Could you please talk a little about your casting process and how do you balance your subjectivity and a casting director's subjectivity when you're looking for actors probably outside of Marvel?
I mean, we try to be really specific about what it is that we're looking for so that we can give really specific directions to an actor. But a lot of times, so we're working on Cherry with Tom Holland right now. We're trying to cast a character, a female lead opposite him in the movie. It's a very weird movie tonally. It's based on a book about drug addiction, but it's very Joseph Heller in tone. It's very dark. Cleveland sense of humor. His book is set in Cleveland. And as we watched auditions come in, we were trying to figure out what the tone of the movie was. And one audition came in particular that just literally had us laughing in tears at the commitment, because it brought to life the insanity of the book in a way. And so you can't always say I'm looking for X, because you need to be available to be surprised. And we thought that we knew what it was that we were looking for, but when the audition came in, it changed our minds about what we were looking for. So I just think see as many people as you can, see as many talented people as you can, and let them and let those performances tell you what it is that you're looking for.
Somebody over there. Rosie, are you over there?
Rosie's got it.
Yeah. Awesome.
So you talked about it's a very grueling and long process to go through, 5:30 to midnight, a year long. How do you keep finding the energy and the balance of keeping yourself constantly invigorated through all that?
Dove dark chocolates. Constant supply all day long. We went through 2,407 bags over the course of I'm kidding. I think meditation helps. If you know how to meditate, it can certainly reset you. You have to take quiet time at lunch. I would go to my trailer and just try to shut down for a half hour. And you just have to take care of yourself as much as you can. I mean, it is a physical grind, and I'd say directing is it'll beat your body up over the years. I don't know if this is true or not, but there's an urban myth in Hollywood that the Directors Guild has the youngest lifespan, or the shortest lifespan of any of the guilds, and I believe it.
I've already got the mic. Can I just ask a quick question? Joe, you already talked. I'm up here.
Sorry. Yep,
I'm out here. It's cool. Whatever.
There we go. Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit more about, because one of the things we study here at Second City is improv, and hearing how and seeing how successfully you've used that in films is really exciting, but also there's that element of the camera and the camera's fixed and all of those things. So would you mind talking a little bit more about the rehearsal process and going into doing shots and all of those things, how you walk that line a little bit?
Well, so we try to work with DPs who are flexible and like to be flexible and can light in a way that accommodates for movement, right? Because we're not going to always hit the same marks every time, and so you have to understand just generally from a philosophical standpoint how you're lighting it. And the same thing with cameras. We get cameras on dollies. We give them movement so that if the scene ends up shifting one way or the other, now we have flexibility to get the camera over there without redoing the entire setup. And you can, if you want to, if you don't have those tools, you can rehearse, 4 or 5 times. Let them improvise for a lot of the rehearsals. Take what you like about the rehearsals, take 20 minutes, write it into a script, and then shoot that. It's another way to do it. But because we have the flexibility and we have our cameras set up in a specific way and our lighting set up in a specific way, we're okay doing it while we're shooting.
We're here at the back.
Straight back?
Hello.
Oh, right there, way in the back. Love it.
So, why do you think people nowadays more identify with villains? Their motivations have to be real. They have to be something people can understand now, as opposed to mustache twirling sons of, you know.
Yeah.
And why do you think villains and heroes especially can't have specific beliefs anymore? They have to have flaws that weigh down what they think, as opposed to just the stereotype.
You want to make a superhero movie about a villain? Look, I just think that people just want good storytelling. I don't like villains that are two-dimensional and superficial because I write them off fairly quickly, and then I write the movie off. I mean, it's heroes only as good as their villain, and this movie doesn't work. That's why we told the first film from Thanos' point of view, is because it gives credence to the heroes. If he is smart and cunning and he's a genius, and what he does is, you can half understand what he's doing, and then you despise the other half of it. It makes him compelling, and it makes the movie more thoughtful. Specific beliefs, I mean, heroes, I think, I don't know, I just like human heroes. I just like characters who are flawed because everyone's flawed. I have a hard time with, characters that are overpowered. We have a difficult time telling stories with them. People that can solve the movie 10 minutes into the film with their power skills or their power set are just hard characters to tell a story about. And lead you to a place that just goes to scale, and too quickly. So we like, making characters as human as possible. I mean, ultimately, these are just allegories, and I think that's why we all like them so much, is that we can take things about the real world and we can put them in these films and they become much more digestible. If you go back and look at any of our movies, not only did we, sit in a room and come up with thematics for them, but we would spend 2 or 3 weeks talking about politics and things that gave us anxiety about the world and things that were troubling us and were complicated questions. If you look at Winter Soldier, it's about, a surveillance state and, how much should the government know, how much shouldn't they know, how much control. And this was all right before Snowden happened. So it was just in the zeitgeist, and it was in our zeitgeist, so we put it in the movie. Thanos is not, it's a thinly veiled sort of parable about, climate change and abusing resoures, So that's something else that gives me anxiety. I've got children, they need to inherit this planet at some point. So, we like to infuse our movies with things that provoke us or will provoke other people, but you can watch it in a superhero movie, where if I just made a documentary about it, it wouldn't reach nearly as wide of an audience.
We're nearing the end of our time together.
Center back?
Yeah. Yeah, we go for it.
Hi. So we all know what happened to Tony at the end of Endgame. Was he always your first choice?
Yeah, we knew very early on. I mean, I think in a way that Tony Stark was always fated to die, and I think that there was here's the thing about our culture that's interesting. A lot of people get upset about that, or when I say something like that. But when you're a hero, your job is to die. That is your job as a hero, is to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. And that's what we're trying to teach people at the movie, is that you're either in it for yourself or you're in it for the community. And Tony was in it for the community. And and again, as a father, it's very difficult to watch a character like that have to make a decision, knowing that he's going to give up his life at the cost of his daughter losing a father and his wife losing a husband. But that's what heroes do. And they have to make those tough decisions, and only the best amongst us can make those kinds of choices. And we should all aspire to be those kinds of people. So that is why I say that I felt like he was fated to die, because our definition of what heroism is that. And he was a very complicated and compelling hero.
I guess that makes your brother the real hero, since he died.
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Joe Russo. Congratulations. Thanks for having me out. Glad to. Thank you so much. You have to be whisked away to something else.
I think I did.
Sadly.
But it was a real honor to sit on this stage where a lot of comedy in this country was shaped. So it was great to be here.
Well, thanks.